Welcome, everyone, to our brand new podcast called Getting Deep with a PhD and a JD.
Hi, Kimmy.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, well, today we have our podcast episode, and it's a little bit different than the way that we normally do it. Normally, we talk about one topic and then we, go through and talk about different parts of it. But today we've decided to do something a little bit different. We are going to talk about some of our podcast episodes that we had in the past. We're going to talk a little bit about them and clarify some things and also talk about some updates. So this is our update show. So I would like to start us off by getting you to talk a little bit about our first episode. Our first episode. Remember our first episode that we did? It was, I know, our inaugural episode. We were just so excited. Black ghost towns. We had, lots of folks who were really interested in hearing about these. And so that was our first show.
Yeah, that was fun. And when we talk about these topics, it kind of opens our eyes to others that are talking about it and other things that are happening. So it kind of brings it to the forefront. So, this part of the update, some of you may already know because it is a mainstream update. One of the cities that I talked about extensively during our first episode was Tulsa, in Black Wall Street, and the massacre that occurred there, and the extensive financial loss. The psychological impacts you talked about in more detail. And, recently there has been a lot of discussion just in general about reparations.
Yeah.
And in particular, there's been reparation discussions about certain incidences that occurred in our history, and the Tulsa massacre is one of them. And so there's a whole docuseries on OWN called Rebuilding Black Wall Street. So this is very specific action that has been taken to try to rectify what happened in that particular town. I think, these kinds of things can be replicated in other towns where this kind of thing happened. So the context of the show is that they follow either a rebuilding effort associated with different kinds of economic loss that occurred, right? So in the different episodes, one episode they follow the building of a natural birthing center, sort of reminiscent of the midwifery that was in Tulsa at the time. Of course, a homeowner, one individual who is an actual descendant, and most of the folks that are in the different, series of this whole docuseries, they are actual descendants of people who experienced loss during that time.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So the second one is a homeowner, and the homeowner, they're helping her preserve a house that she inherited through what's called the nonprofit 1256 movement. And I'm going to come back to that in a second.
Okay.
But that's kind of the where some of the money is coming from for that particular, preservation or reparation. They are built in one episode. They're building a transition house for recently incarcerated women.
Okay. A
family farm, of course, so that they can change or contribute to eliminating the food desert of North Tulsa. Food deserts, we know what those are, where there's not quality food in proximity to people so that they can have access to healthy food options. There's an episode on what's called the Skyline Mansion, which used to be owned by, I think his name was Brady was his last name. And back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, he would hold Klan member rally meetings there. And I actually saw this episode. And so the people who own it now is a rap group called Fire in Little Africa, I think it is. And
So it's a rap group that owns
Mhm.
this.
Yeah,
Wow.
I
Okay.
think so. Either they own it or they have, or they are collaborating in
Okay. So they have
owning
some
it.
connection to it. In
Mhm.
other words, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so they have a studio in there where they make, where they make music, and so it's kind of the irony of this used to be where clan members used to meet, and now there's this rap group who is occupying it. But I think
Right.
it's also sort of like a museum kind of thing too, where people can
Yeah.
come and take a look at it, and it's been restored. And then they also, of course, built a soul food restaurant. So I just thought that that was a good example of the kinds of action that can be taken. Now, I do want to go back to that 1256 movement nonprofit that I was talking about.
Yeah. Because
That was,
I hadn't heard about that, and I know some of our
yeah.
listeners probably haven't heard about it either.
So it's interesting because it's not necessarily funded by the city, which is where true reparations comes from. A lot of its funding comes from, and I'm going to look at it, comes from donations,
Oh,
public,
okay.
private, and public donations. It's a 501c3 tax exempt corporation, and it's for purposes of, restitution for 1,256 Black families for land and homes destroyed by white mobs. Um, you know, where the city, fire, politicians, took a blind eye toward.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought it was interesting that, you can actually, it's sort of like a self-funding reparations
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. So if anybody who's listening wants to take further action or look further into it, this is one of the things you can look into. It's actually 1256movement.org. The number is
And they can
1256.
definitely research it and donate if they choose, to
Yeah.
help. Yeah.
And then the other thing, we talked about Bruce's Beach,
Yes.
and and so there had been some conversation about the fact that they're selling it back to LA
Mm-hmm.
County,
Mm-hmm.
and just wanted to, because I kind of felt that way too, kind of like, oh, why are they selling it back? But the reason that the family provided is that the beach is zoned for public use, and it just made it very difficult for them to benefit financially from it.
Yeah. So
You
they
know,
just decided to do you that's in their best interest,
yes, so just the whole
And
point of reparation.
yes. And I
Hmm.
like that because a lot of times people will say, okay, well, I want to do this or I want to do this. And sometimes if they're doing it for their own best interests, people will say, oh, they're selfish or, oh, why are
Hmm.
they doing that? But you know what? They have to do what's best for them and their family. And so I,
Hmm.
I, I appreciate that they came forward and said that and that they're
And,
doing that.
and that's what everyone does. Like all of the families, like the white families who inherited property, they were able to do with it as they please.
Right.
And that's the whole idea. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I should be able to control the assets that I own, the wealth that I own, and maximize it to the best of what's best for my family, or
Exactly.
whatever your goal is in life. It could be community, it could be any of those things, and who knows, that they're selling it for 20 million. They could have a variety of projects in their mind that
Yeah.
they want to,
And that
that they
money,
want to
you're
pursue.
absolutely right. That money could be used to do a bunch of different things. And so, the interesting thing is that this is their money. They're getting this money. And I don't think we should expect them to say, okay, this is what I did with 10,000. This
Yeah,
is what I did with this, because we wouldn't expect anybody else to do that.
exactly. It's none of our business.
It's
As
none
long
of
as
our
they
business.
got paid what they are entitled to,
Exactly.
that's all that matters.
Exactly. They could go
Hmm.
out and just get the money out of the bank and just throw it up and burn it or whatever, but that would
Hmm.
be their right to do that. And so I
Hmm.
think that's important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's all. Those are the updates that I have for that.
So those are some great updates and
Mhm.
and some really positive things.
Yes.
We talked about uh, we talked about the Generation Work-Life Balance Challenge,
Hmm.
Generation X and Generation Z. We talked about that, and we also talked about is marriage obsolete? And when I was thinking about it, I said these topics are very, very different, but there are some similarities because if we think about the group of folks that are now coming into the age of quote first marriage, it's usually in the 20s. And so we think about people who are entering the workforce or have been there just a few years. We're looking at that Generation Z part of it, the older part of it. And so I thought, well, let me go back and think about this and how Generation Z is a little bit different from Generation X in terms of these different things. Because the generation, this is the first generation, Generation Z is the first generation that has really grown up with technology. These are the techies. I know that when I remember getting my first computer, and I was probably about 10, I think. TRS-80 color computer. I was 9 or 10, or actually I may have been 11, but I remember that. But Generation Z, these are folks who getting their quote first computer was not really a huge hallmark because when they were born and computers were being
Yeah.
used in
Mm-hmm.
their birthing process.
Mm-hmm.
So they have been part of that generation, from day one. And they've also grown up, and now the economy is different. We see higher inflation. We see the cost of college, the cost of grad school. We see a lot of different expenses that when we were at that age that we still had those expenses, but we had, I think, a little bit different different types of opportunities to move past the barriers and to have things that are more affordable. But I say all of this because Generation Z is a generation that, when you survey people and you ask about being, like what you want to aspire to be, Generation Xers were more about they're going to be managers and doctors and lawyers and move up the corporate ladder, whereas Generation Zs are more apt to say, wait a second, I want to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
What is going to fulfill me and bring happiness? And so this attitude, and I also want to say, and I should have said this at first, is that we're not talking about every single Generation Z. We're just talking about patterns. Okay.
Yeah.
So Generation Z, when we're talking about in the workplace, Generation Zs are okay not continuously climbing that ladder. Whereas in Generation X, Generation Xers are now the people who have climbed to a certain point and are climbing and are working really, really hard. And so a lot of the Generation Zs have seen the Generation Xers and the millennials working really, really, really hard,
Mm-hmm.
and just they see a lot of people who are burned out.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it's really affected their work-life balance. Like they really want a greater balance. And it's also affected how they view marriage. And that's where this ties in, because Generation Z, they're less likely to get married. They're also less likely to see it as being this huge responsibility that they have to
Mm-hmm.
have.
Right.
They see it, if they get married, okay. If they don't, they're fine. Same with children.
And with children, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when they've done surveys, it's not because Generation Z, it's not because they don't like and love children. It's because they see their world as being
Too destructive.
being destructive, having a lot more violence.
Mm-hmm.
They just, a lot of them say, I just don't want to bring children into that.
Yeah. It's a very intentional decision.
It's a very intentional decision.
Mm-hmm.
And also, when we think about leadership decisions, their definition of success is very different. Like they realize, because of where we are now with the economy, and also you have to realize that these are folks who were a lot of times really, really young during, remember 2008? remember the stock market
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
crash? Yeah, yeah. And so
Yeah.
if you think of those folks and how they, they had some parents or friends that lost a lot,
Hmm.
and they were just they just grew up with very different expectations.
Yeah.
And so uh, I really appreciated that we did those two shows about marriage and
Yeah.
about looking at work-life balance, because
Yeah.
it's really made me start to think about and to understand a little bit more about how the world has changed, and
Hmm.
how our expectations and our values have changed because
Yeah.
of what we're experiencing now.
Yeah.
And so,
I think
yeah,
the thing about children was new to me, and how they really are deciding not to have children. So I think that's a very important distinction between the generations. It's like, and it's an overall thing of going against or not feeling as though they have to put themselves into a box
right,
just because
right,
this is how it's always been done. It's like,
yeah,
okay, just because it's always been done doesn't mean it's right.
exactly.
And just because I'm 25 doesn't mean I shouldn't be able to say that.
Exactly. And also in the United States, this is the first generation, I mean, within like 50 years, that they now don't have Roe v. Wade. And
Mm,
so the whole understanding of fertility
mm-hmm,
and abortion and birth control, it's really in the public sphere right now. So people are really thinking about what their choices are, and they're thinking about, well, do I really want to have children?
mm-hmm.
They're really, really making
Yeah,
conscious effort to really answer that question.
yeah,
And so, yeah,
cool. All right,
yes.
that was great.
Yeah, one thing before I forget, I also want to mention that there are fewer Generation Zs who are actually going to college.
oh,
And so the college numbers,
doesn't surprise me. That doesn't. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so the reasons are why. Well, the reasons are it's about money,
I mean, college is so
so
expensive.
expensive. And
Jeez.
I think I read a statement, something that said that prices were rising, and this isn't just tuition, but this is about the cost, the opportunity cost, like when you go to college, you miss opportunities, and so
Mm-hmm.
you factor in the opportunity cost as well as
Mm-hmm.
tuition and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe it said something like it was rising at 12% per year, which is outrageous,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
It's interesting you say that. You brought that up because I actually just read an article about the the worst colleges. And
Uh-oh.
the criteria, I'm not going to say which ones they were, but the criteria that was often in the blurb about that particular college was the comparison of the cost of the college, and the potential income that the graduate from that college could earn.
Earn,
And
yes.
just and reading that article, just looking at these colleges, and the annual cost was like $40,000. It's like the standard, which is $160,000 after undergrad.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's changed, but generally speaking, if you want to increase your earnings capability, a lot of times you have to get an advanced degree.
Degree, right. Or
And
certifications.
yeah, and you're leaving undergrad with $160,000, which
Yeah.
most of that is probably debt.
Debt.
And so like, well, for one school, it's like, the tuition is 45,000, but a person who graduates from here is only earning $41,000 a year. So it was sort of that comparison.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and it's like you go to college and you don't have an actual, what's the best way to say,
The return on investment.
yeah, that
Yeah.
in the form of a skill that
Yeah.
can bring the income that they need.
And this is why
So I wonder
when
if
the
vocational schools have
research,
increased.
yes, this is why vocational schools have increased. This is why not going to college, but doing like, vocational trade.
Hmm. They're
Um,
training. Hmm.
and also startups. We see
Hmm.
Generation Z doing startups, doing things called, what did they call this? They called it the hustle community, in terms
Oh,
of, um, I think that's what they called it. I could be incorrect, but where people
Gig
are driving
economy.
for Uber
The
or
gig.
they're, yeah, and they're doing things and they don't necessarily have, like, for example, jobs with benefits.
Yeah.
Like that was really important for Generation X. You have to
Mm-hmm.
get the health benefits. You have to have,
Mm-hmm.
the retirement, all of that. But
Mm-hmm.
Generation Z folks, we're seeing a greater proportion of those not uh, getting like the medical benefits, or they'll do Uber, they'll drive for Uber, they'll do this, they'll do Obamacare, they'll figure it out, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not all wrapped up into one full-time job.
Traditional job. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's what I was saying. The gig economy. That's what they make
the
up.
gig economy. That's what I
Mm-hmm.
meant, not the
Mm-hmm.
hustle. The
No.
Gen Xers, we're the hustlers.
Yes, the gig.
And
And I just made that connection that it's the gig economy
the
because
gig
it's like
economy.
gigs here and there. Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
And that's also like thinking about carving out time, because when you have those types of schedules, you can carve out time to do things for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
Mm-hmm.
if we think about Generation Xers, like the time that we have to do things for ourselves is a lot more limited because we spend so much time at work,
Mm-hmm.
and now
Mm-hmm.
we're at the point where a lot of Generation Xers have had children that are in college now. So Generation X parents are still working really, really hard to pay for
Yeah.
those colleges.
Absolutely. And one other thing is their focus on therapy.
Yeah,
And so when I was reading this particular article about therapy, this Generation Zer was saying that her mom just couldn't believe that she was spending, I think she said it was $68 a week for her session and every week. And
right.
she said my mom was just appalled that I was spending all this money. This coming from a woman who spends $100 to $150 a week on eating out, paying for a 4,500 square foot house when it's just her because anything less isn't nice enough. And so
Mm,
it was, it was just very interesting to hear her say that. And, we talk about going to the gym to work out our bodies when our brain is our most important muscle in our body or organ in our
or
body.
yeah,
And we don't feel like we should spend money to work it out, which
right,
we should. So I think
right.
that Generation Zers are more likely to have therapy as a part of their normal day to day needs, like
Yeah,
eating, housing, and therapy.
yeah, yeah. I
So,
agree, and I
mhm,
absolutely see that.
yeah.
And I see the virtual therapy organizations
Mhm.
that are advertising,
Oh,
and I don't remember ever seeing that. When we were in our 20s, we
oh.
didn't see therapeutic organizations. If we did, it was about substance use or something
Oh,
that
yeah.
was perceived as you are really impaired.
Mm-hmm.
It
You
wasn't
need help.
about, yeah, you need help. It
Mhm.
wasn't about, well, this is a normal part of what you need to do. You need to work on yourself
Yep.
and integrating it and making it normal, normalizing it. We didn't see
Mhm.
that,
Oh no, we didn't.
not at all. And so
Mhm.
that's definitely something that has changed.
So, to kind of segue into another one of our episodes that we did that was as it relates to hair. I think it was
Yeah,
actually
yes.
I think it was our second and third episode.
Yes, second and third, right at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the updates and clarifications that I wanted to provide is as it relates to the hair reparations episode, where we talked about the lawsuits that have cropped up in relation to hair relaxers and their correlation to cancers, a
Right.
variety of different cancers, right?
Yeah.
And so the clarification that I wanted to kind of get into was the actual kinds of lawsuits that are happening. And so because I don't think I made that distinction before, and that the lawsuits that are occurring right now aren't class action. They are what we call multi-district.
Okay.
And so the
Okay.
best way for me to describe the difference is So, in a class action, usually a class action becomes one lawsuit
Hmm.
and different, and then everyone who's affected by this particular issue sort of joins and they get paid from the pool of money that's the result of any settlement or judgments or anything that occur. You
Right.
know, everybody's asked to join. However, but multi-district litigation means that individuals can still file their own and will have to file their own lawsuits if they have been affected by relaxers, like if they have cancer and they've been using relaxers, and there's different kinds of cancers that were listed. And you would talk with a local attorney who is handling these kinds of cases, and and the litigation is just handled in one court, like, but it's not
Okay.
one lawsuit.
So it's
It's
like one court that is
mhm,
handling multiple lawsuits of the
mhm,
same kind.
yeah.
Okay.
So they're
Okay.
because, and that's why it's called multi-district, because
Uh-huh.
you file it where where you are, and then it's combined into
Into one court.
one district, right? One
Okay.
court, one
So
judge or
that
whatever.
seems like it would help with like resources. You would
Well,
have.
yeah. So the research that I've uncovered is that, yeah, it certainly could make awards more substantial if you have filed your own lawsuit. You see, so
Okay. Yeah.
the likelihood of compensation being higher,
Right.
possibly,
Right.
in that instance. So I wanted to make sure that's clear. So, for anybody out there who is, suffering from that and feel as though there may be a correlation to your prior use of relaxers, you would need to you should reach out to an attorney, in your area to discuss it further, and how you would be able to be a part of this, of what's going on here in this litigation. And then the other thing that we discovered is that the Food and Drug Administration is entertaining the idea of rules affecting relaxers based on the correlation to causing cancer. And so it looks like the FDA just proposed a rule. And the rulemaking process can be pretty extensive and detailed, and can take some time. But it looks like they're at the proposed rule stage, and then I think there would be a certain time period for sort of discussion, I guess
Mhm.
is the best way to
I
describe it.
think, if I remember correctly, I think I saw something about April
Yeah.
2024.
So the
I saw
target
something.
date for the proposed ban to go into effect is April 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
hmm So, and in particular, it's a ban on the one of the chemicals in relaxers. So I don't think it's going to be a ban of relaxers,
Right.
but a ban of formaldehyde as an ingredient in the
Yeah.
hair relaxers,
And
because of its
and I meant to research this. Do you know if, because I think they said that like 40 to 50% of the hair relaxers that Black women use have formaldehyde in them. And
okay.
so I'm wondering, and this might be something that we have to think about for a future show. I'm wondering what, like, if you have a relaxer that has formaldehyde versus one that doesn't, like, what is the difference?
hmm
Like, does one straighten better, or, I mean,
Yeah.
I wonder what's the difference, because
Yeah.
that could also affect how people who use these relaxers feel about the formaldehyde being banned. And
Not vegan.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, and also, I know formaldehyde is in, for white women, it's in like the Brazilian blowouts that they
Yeah.
use.
Yep.
Yes,
And keratin treatments.
and keratin treatments. Yes. So we're talking about hair relaxers, but we're also talking about other things that contain formaldehyde that, you
Yeah.
know, these things aren't good. They aren't good. They are not good for our health.
Not at all. And I'm just reading further here to see if there is an answer to the question that you just posed. Um, and I'm just trying to do it real quick here. It doesn't look like this article I'm reading talks about that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's something that we could
that
look
we can
into.
look up. Yeah,
Mhm.
because I know that they have the lye versus no lye relaxers.
Yeah. And I don't know the difference between. I guess lye is a separate chemical itself.
Yes,
It's separate from
yes.
formaldehyde.
That's
Okay.
oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
totally separate. I know
Yeah.
the no lye relaxers were marketed as being more gentle,
Yeah.
but they both have things that break down the hair structure
Yes.
to make it, because they have to break down the hair
Make it
bonds
straight.
to make it
Hmm.
straighten. Yeah. So
Right. Hmm.
they both are really not good in terms
Hmm.
of your
Your health.
hair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because one of the things, and for your health in general. So it's like some of the adverse effects that people experience would be watery eyes, burning, in addition to the cancer link.
Yeah.
But watery eyes, burning sensation in the eyes, nose, and throat, coughing, wheezing, nausea, and skin irritation as well.
Hmm.
Um, allergic dermatitis, just a host of
Just a
things.
whole list of things, right?
Headaches, asthma, and like I said, the cancer link.
Yeah.
Uterine, breast, and even ovarian,
Hmm. And
especially for women.
we go back to just really thinking about why we would be willing to put such dangerous chemicals. And I say chemicals because formaldehyde is one of them, but there are probably other things as well,
Hmm.
that impact us in a negative way. Why we're willing to do this, to put these negative things in our bodies so that we can be socially acceptable.
It's about the social
It's
acceptance
about the acceptance. And so I think that
and a
you
level of
know
vanity,
yeah, it's about vanity, it's about social acceptance, and it's about and also, if you really,
esteem.
yes, esteem. And you think about it, it's Black women who are doing this to other Black women
Oh yeah.
because out of being able to have their own businesses by doing hair. And so there are lots of issues wrapped up in this.
Oh yeah. And we
Lots of
talked
issues
about it.
wrapped up in
So
this.
we talked about some of those things in the episode.
We
So if you
did
want to go back
go back.
and listen to those episodes, definitely do that. Hopefully, we can maybe add the link to the other episodes that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we have links that we need to go back and
Hmm.
link in, and we promise we will.
Yeah.
It's just we're both Generation X. We're just working so hard. We're busy working.
Yes.
The Generation Zs, out there are like, okay, we're gonna just take our time. We're gonna live more slowly.
Hmm.
We're gonna live
Yeah.
more slowly.
Yeah.
Um,
And so our final update for this particular episode is on our Talking Black episode. Do you remember that?
oh yeah, I
That one
remember
was a
that.
popular one.
Yes,
I
that
think
was
that was
very
our
popular. Was that episode? I feel like that was episode 4. I think
let's
because
see.
we did Black Ghost Towns, and then we did our hair story, and then we did hair reparations, and then we did Talking Black. So I think that was our fourth. I think that was our fourth episode.
So Talking Black. Yep, you're right. That was our fourth episode.
Fourth episode.
So for the update that I have for that is very small. So we talked about that they had released 10 words, and we went over some of those words. And one of the things that I learned recently is that they have completed the first 100 word entries, and also that the full dictionary will also be added to the Oxford English dictionary, just the main one. It'll be added to the
So
word.
the words will actually be incorporated
Uh-huh.
into. Okay.
Yeah. And the date is still 2025, where it's supposed to be released or published, but it's not clear as to whether or not it will be published in print. So it may just be digital in
Okay.
2025 when they release
And
it.
that makes sense to me. Just thinking about how society is going towards
Yeah.
digitally printed
Yeah.
materials anyway, and it also leaves them the ability to really quickly update. That's
Yes.
the other thing. When you don't have something in print, you can quickly update it update it digitally. So
Yep.
that makes sense.
Yeah. So they're
Yeah.
still taking um entry requests or suggestions from the public. So that's still there on the Oxford Dictionary website. I don't have it pulled up right now, but yeah, you can Google the Oxford, and it's specifically called the Oxford Dictionary of African American English. Yeah, the Oxford Dictionary of African American English. So you can Google that, and you'll find where you can suggest an entry.
Very nice. So, our listeners, if you would like to contribute, that'd be great. That's a great opportunity to do that
Mm-hmm.
and to really enhance the dictionary for
Mm-hmm.
future readers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that's about it, Nikki.
Yeah,
This was
I
a good
know.
Uh-huh. And it was fun to reminisce about these topics that resonated with us, so much when we chose them. So it was good
Yeah.
to provide the update.
I know. Just thinking back when we first started this podcast, we wanted to really create a space where we could have some great discussions. And so it's been great, like going back, thinking about those first episodes and also thinking about, what's happened and what's changed and what new information do we have. So I think that's really been great. I
Yes.
appreciate us doing this episode.
Yeah, good. I hope you guys do too. I hope the listeners and subscribers appreciate this update. Once again, comment, like, and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. We'll include links to the episodes that we referenced during our conversation today, so you can go back and look at those in full and in totality.
Absolutely.
And until next time.
Yes, until next time. And make sure you like and subscribe, and please comment and let us know what additional topics you would like for us to delve into and to think about, because we definitely we definitely want to get deep on topics and things that you are interested in as well.
Yep.
So
Alrighty. We'll also we'll be taking a break Thanksgiving week, so you won't get an episode from us that week. But we'll be right back the week after.
yes, we absolutely will. So use this time to think about additional topics that you'd like for us to delve into. And if you are celebrating Thanksgiving with your friends and family, please have a wonderful, wonderful time.
Yes.
You're also celebrating Friendsgiving, which is something that folks are doing as well. Yeah, very popular.
Yeah. So enjoy and bye until next time.
Bye.